Last week, there was a debate on the floor of the United States Senate as Senator Tim Scott, the black Republican senator from South Carolina, put forward legislation called the Justice Act. Now, some were accusing him of tokenism. He's the token black guy on the Republican side of the aisle in the Senate. Well, keep in mind, there are two black people, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, on the Democratic side of the aisle in the United States Senate. But they were saying, oh, he's a token. That's why he is leading the charge on the Justice Act, his own bill for police reform. But that's ridiculous. Tim Scott asked to take leadership of this bill, specifically because he has firsthand experience with these kinds of issues and feels passionately about it. The Democrats wouldn't allow the bill to move forward. 45 to 55. Rather, 55 to 45. It needed 60 votes in order to move forward procedurally for an actual debate on the bill itself and to take up that legislation, which could have been passed, theoretically, 51-49 after that point. The Democrats didn't let it get there, 55 to 45. Senator Tim Scott, you could tell that he really does care genuinely and passionately about this issue. And he is absolutely steamed, and rightfully so, that the Democrats refuse to even take up this legislation. In fact, in Cut 4, on the floor of the United States Senate last week, Senator Tim Scott rightly griped about how Democrats just said no.
Today, I lost a vote on a piece of legislation that would have led to systemic change in the relationship between the communities of color and the law enforcement community. We would have broken this concept in this nation that somehow, some way, you have to either be for law enforcement or for communities of color. That is a false binary choice. It's just not true. This legislation spoke to the important issues that have brought us here today. We wouldn't be here if it were not, as Senator Perdue alluded to, the death of yet another African-American man, George Floyd. His murder is why the country has given us the opportunity to lead. And my friends on the other side just said no. Not no to the legislation. They just said no. And why am I saying that they didn't just say no to the legislation? It's because along the way, I sat down with many of them and said, what do you need? And Senator Schumer sent a letter telling, I believe it was Senator McConnell, there were 5 things in the legislation that needed to be improved. I said, let's give them the 5 amendments. I sat down with more senators, and they said, wait. There's not just 5, there's 20. I said, how about 20 amendments? And they walked out. You see, this process is not broken because of the legislation. This is a broken process beyond that one piece of legislation. It's one of the reasons why communities of color, young Americans of all colors, are losing faith in the institutions of authority and power in this nation, because we're playing small ball. We're playing for those in the insulated chambers. We're playing for presidential politics. That's small ball.
That's small ball. I want to share some excerpts from Tim Scott's speech last week. We didn't get the chance to do so on this program because it really highlights what's going on in our political climate right now. As people across the country are clamoring for real change, he's trying to put forward a real discussion, get forward a bill, willing to work with the Democrats every step of the way. And not only was he getting pushback to the point of the bill not even being allowed to move forward, But he was being attacked and maligned in many cases for what he was trying to do. Let's go to cut 6 here. This is Senator Tim Scott, South Carolina, on the floor of the United States Senate last week, explaining what the Democrats' real problem with the Justice Act was.
I even said something that I didn't think I would say. I said, what about a manager's amendment? Let's just fix everything in one fell swoop. They said, no, thank you. So I find it disingenuous that people say, well, why don't you just sit down with one member and work it out? Well, if a manager's amendment won't do it, if the 5 amendments that they wrote in a letter saying that they needed to have these things fixed won't do it, if 20 amendments won't do it, you have an open process on the floor of the United States Senate that requires 60 votes to get off of the bill, then what, pray tell, is the problem? Well, I finally realized what the problem is, Mr. President. The actual problem is not what is being offered, it is who is offering it. It took me a long time to figure out the most obvious thing in the room. It's not the what. I've listened to the press conferences, I've read the newspapers. I'm not sure that anyone who's actually reporting on the bill has actually read the bill. Because the next time I see another story or editorial that says, we don't do this, their bill does that, and you put the two together, and it's not just off, it's just dead wrong. So I realized finally, it's the who that's offering this.
The who that's offering this. I've seen interviews with Senator Scott where he talks eloquently about the issues that as he sees them and how this Justice Act would have addressed those issues. And yet the Democrats wouldn't even allow it to move on to that step for debate. And he kept giving them offering after offering after offering. Basically what could have happened is this bill could pass the Senate and then they could go to conference committee, I think, and work it out between the Republican-controlled Senate and the Democrat-controlled House. But the Democrats, as Senator Scott pointed out very ably in his speech on the Senate floor, the Democrats were insistent simply upon waiting, in essence, until the election. Here is, finally, cut 9, Senator Scott talking about the Democrats' strategy here.
But instead of having a debate on that today and getting not 5 amendments, but 20 amendments, a manager's amendment, and instead of going forward and getting what you want now, they've decided to punt this ball until the election. You know why? Because they believe that the polls reflect a 15-point deficit on our side. Therefore, they can get the bill they want in November. All they have to do is win the election. And then roll in January, and they get a chance to write the police reform bill without our support at all. Well, this is what they did in the House, right? No amendments in the House for Republicans on their bill. We're saying amendments on our side. Democrats are saying no amendments in the House, but you here in the United States Senate, because we are the world's greatest deliberative body, you can have amendments. Not in the House, not under Speaker Pelosi, but under Leader McConnell, you get at least 20 amendments. And I thought, what the heck, I'll throw in the manager's amendment too. But that was not good enough, because the irony of the story is not the bill. The irony of the story is that today and through the rest of the June and all of July, what we're going to have here is, instead of getting 70% of what you wanted or more, you're going to get 0. How's that for a return? How's that for loyalty? How does that work for the little kid at home in North Charleston where Walter Scott got shot? How does that work around the country when, instead of getting 70% of what you wanted, today and tomorrow and next week, you get 0? And you're going to wait until the election to get more. Okay.
Tremendous address on the floor of the United States Senate last week. Senator Tim Scott telling it exactly like it is. This is the agenda, clearly. They don't want to get a vote now, get something done quickly. It's all for show. We'll talk about that more with Cassie Smedley in a matter of moments here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, because it is abundantly clear, and it is unfortunate, to say the least, that they're simply playing politics with this issue. Senator Scott showing real leadership. We need more of it. You just watched a clip from Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel today. You want to catch our live show. And I love your support.
I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.